Hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Trek Mission Log. My name is Jason Gilbert. I am very glad that you're here. Right at the onset, I want to give you all a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart. Last week's episode reviewing the Galileo 7 reached over 800 views, and we received 13 brand new subscribers, and it literally blew me away. Thank you so much, and I am very happy that you are on this journey with me. And if you haven't as yet subscribed, would you consider doing so? It really helps me, and it really helps this channel out immensely. Keep in mind, when we reach 100 subscribers, I will be doing a special giveaway to one lucky subscriber. Also, you can check us out on Instagram at Trek Mission Log, and we can connect with each other on there. Now today, we're going to be reviewing the original series, Season 1, Episode 18, titled The Squire of Gothos. This episode aired on January the 12th, 1967. It was written by Paul Schneider, directed by Don McDougall, and produced by Gene L. Kuhn. This is a superb episode, and I'm really excited about reviewing this. So let's dive in. The Enterprise is enjoying a peaceful cruise to Colony Beta 6, where they are delivering some much needed supplies. The bridge crew all are enjoying a cup of coffee, and they're traveling through something that they call a space desert. McCoy and Kirk talk about how this reminds them of the deserts back on planet Earth. It's at that point that Spock picks up an unusual space displacement reading. Kirk orders it to be put on visual. They see an uncharted planet in front of them. The readings indicate that the planet has a surface of iron silica. Kirk said that there is no time to investigate as they need to bring the supplies to Beta 6, but he orders to read whatever they can from the ship's instruments and then log it in their memory banks for future investigation. Kirk then orders Sulu to turn the ship 40 degrees starboard. At that point, Sulu looks very confused, and as he stands up, he vanishes in front of the whole bridge crew. Kirk runs over to Sulu's station, and he too vanishes in front of everyone. Spock immediately takes charge, ordering emergency full reverse. We then fade to the title sequence. As we come back, we hear a ship's log from First Officer Spock, and I believe that this is the first time that he identifies himself as First Officer. The Enterprise is in orbit around this planet, and after 4 hours of searching, they are unsuccessful in finding Sulu or Spock. Spock has put the ship on red alert. A geology specialist from the science team is now at Sulu's station to give Spock surface readings. The whole planet is going through an intense ion storm and is incapable of supporting life. At this point, Uhura receives a strange message on her screen. Spock comes over to see it, and the message reads, "Greetings and felicitations." And it looks as if it's in old-style calligraphy handwriting. Uhura tries to communicate, but to no avail. Another message comes up on that same screen that says, "Hip hip hurrah, tally ho." McCoy tells Spock that there is life down there, and Spock agrees. He orders the transporter room to be ready. Spock sends down the geologist, navigator DeSalle, and McCoy in a landing party. They beam down and discover that there is a pocket of breathable air, and there are trees and vegetation, but communication with the ship is cut off. The landing party discover an old Earth-style castle, and they move in to investigate. Inside, they see a panorama of sculptures, paintings, tapestries, art, etc. They see a couple of different alien species on display as well. And finally, they locate Kirk and Sulu. McCoy can't get a reading on his medical scanner. Suddenly, the castle door closes and a man is playing a harpsichord. At his command, this man releases Kirk and Sulu from their frozen state, and he welcomes everybody to an island of peace on his stormy planet of Gothos. He introduces himself as retired General Trelane, but they can refer to him as Squire Trelane or the Squire of Gothos. He said or Gothos, I can't remember how it's pronounced. He said he made planet Earth his hobby and was shocked to see that humans made it into space. The landing party decipher that they are 900 light years from Earth, and so what Trelane is studying is actually 900 years old, hence the ancient castle and the decor. Trelane says when he saw their ship, he brought them to his planet to learn about them and their history of war and conquest. Now, DeSalle tries to stun the Squire with his phaser, and Trelane freezes him. Trelane takes the phaser and then releases DeSalle. He adjusts the settings and puts the phaser on kill and shoots at the different aliens that are on display there. I take it that they are alive but frozen like Kirk and Sulu were. And so Trelane was killing them in cold blood for his own amusement. Kirk asked him how he built all of this, and Trelane said that he and others have perfected a system where they can convert matter to energy and vice versa. Kirk then tries to leave. Trelane makes him disappear and reappear on the planet's ion storm. And after he's there for a moment, Trelane brings him back. We are dealing with a very, very powerful being here. On the Enterprise, Spock reports that they have diverted impulse power to their sensors, and they were able to locate a small area on the planet that was stable and capable of supporting life. On the planet, while Trelane plays the harpsichord, McCoy tells Kirk that his readings on Trelane were unbelievable. He is not life as we know it. There are no readings from him at all. As they look around, they notice several curious things. There's a fire blazing in the fireplace, but it gives off no heat. Kirk said that whatever we're dealing with, although he is powerful, is not all knowledgeable. He makes mistakes. Kirk demands to leave, but Trelane denies it. When Kirk tells him that there are over 400 men and women on his ship that he needed to get to, Trelane was intrigued by the fact that there are females aboard, and he wants to bring the women to the planet, but Kirk refuses. And then suddenly, a transporter signal comes through, and the landing party is beamed back to the ship. Kirk wants to warp out. Suddenly, Trelane appears on the bridge, and he displays anger towards Spock for beaming his guests away from him. In an instant, they are all in a giant dining room in his castle. DeSalle once again tries to attack him, but Trelane freezes him. In a moment, Trelane releases him. Uhura and Yeoman Ross are also brought down. Trelane gives Uhura the ability to play the harpsichord while he and Ross dance. Sulu, full of anger, asks Kirk how long they're going to keep putting up with this, and Kirk said until they can think a way out of it. While Trelane and Ross dance, Kirk, Spock, and McCoy have a discussion amongst each other. The food has no taste, the fire gives off no heat. Spock says Trelane has earth forms, but no substance, which makes Trelane fallible. And Kirk said, If he's fallible, he is not all-powerful, meaning that someone or something is helping him. Spock thinks that there may be something in the mirror giving Trelane these abilities because he never strays too far from it. Perhaps a machine of some sort. Kirk thinks that he can turn Trelane's lights off all at once. And out loud, Kirk said that Trelane is an immature, unbalanced mind. And he challenges Trelane to a duel. Trelane then pulls out dueling pistols, and they prepare for the duel. Trelane demands first shot. Kirk said, "We shoot together." Trelane then turns his pistol towards Spock and says he gets first shot or Spock dies. So Kirk gives in. And Trelane, after a moment of pointing the gun at Kirk, shoots up to the ceiling. It is now Kirk's shot. Kirk takes aim at the Squire, and then in a moment aims at the mirror, and he blows the mirror to smithereens. All of a sudden, all the lights go off, the fire dies, and communications with the ship are restored. Trelane said that Kirk ruined everything and earned his wrath. Trelane then walks to the mirror and vanishes. Kirk calls the ship and orders everyone beamed up. They then leave the planet as fast as they can. As they are warping out, all of a sudden the planet appears ahead of them, and they are on a collision course. And through a hard turn, they dodge it. And this happens several times. Kirk then orders orbit and makes a decision once again to beam down. And he orders Spock to leave if he doesn't hear from Kirk in 1 hour. He then steps into the turbo lift and then it finds himself immediately on the planet in a courtroom. And Trelane is the judge. Trelane tells him that if Kirk tries anything, he will die. The shadow of a noose appears behind him. What an amazing shot that is. Kirk says to Trelane to vent his anger directly at him and let his ship go. Trelane then sentences him to death by hanging. Trelane walks down to Kirk and then is filled with joy. He did all of this simply so that he could feel what anger is like. The noose then makes its way to Kirk. Trelane said for one moment he did feel this anger, but he then felt unsatisfied because everything was too easy. And Kirk tells him that that's what his problem is. He doesn't think. Kirk tells him that if he wants to commit murder, he should go ahead and do it, but there's no sport in a simple hanging. This intrigues Trelane, so they come up with the idea of a hunt. Kirk asked him to up the stakes, let the ship go free, and Kirk will give him a real contest. Trelane agrees to these terms. At his allowance, Kirk tries to contact the ship. He shouts orders to leave orbit, but he can't get through. The hunt begins. Trelane chases Kirk. Kirk then kicks a sword out of Trelane's hand, and as Kirk tries to stab him, Trelane vanishes and then reappears. I'm thinking that if we're lucky, we might get to see a Shatner chop. The fight continues, and Kirk makes it to the castle door, and Trelane spots him, and as he tries to run away, part of a prison cell appears on one side of Kirk and then on the other, trapping him. And before Kirk dies, Trelane wants him to admit defeat, and Kirk refuses. Suddenly, a voice is heard, and two glowing apparitions appear. When they order Trelane to come with them, he throws a childish temper tantrum. They are in charge of him, parents perhaps. They then take him away. After Trelane is gone, they apologize to Kirk, and he asks them who they are, but they don't answer. He then calls up to the Enterprise and orders a beam-up. The ship is now approaching Colony Beta 6 with the supplies. Spock approaches Kirk and asks how they will describe Trelane in the reports, And at first, Kirk described him as a god of war, but then he changed his mind. Kirk described him as a naughty child. And as Spock walks away, Kirk breathes a sigh of relief and smiles, and all is well. Wow, what a jam-packed episode. I want to say that this episode is an absolute masterpiece. It has so many incredible elements to it. Very good science fiction story, and quite possibly an important element for the future of Star Trek. And I'll explain that in just a few moments. This also has some important life lessons in it. Now, the overall story is very intriguing. The Enterprise captures the attention of an incredibly powerful entity who has an incredible fascination with Earth. Unfortunately, he abuses his power in a villainous way instead of using it for good. And even though he is extremely powerful, he does have his limitations, and ultimately human intuition rules the day. Very, very cool stuff here. All players in this episode acted brilliantly. Again, we see the power of the ensemble. It was very cool to see that Sulu was in a little bit on the problem solving, although at one point it was just the three main characters, Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. It's cool to see how they study their surroundings and study their enemy and come up with ways to break free. Very good. Almost felt a little bit like there was an element of MacGyver in this episode, where they use whatever they can find to get their way out of this predicament. I absolutely love the character Trelane, brilliantly portrayed by William Campbell. Now, William Campbell was never a huge star, but he should have been, in my humble opinion. He did play supporting roles in some major films, including Operation Pacific and The High and the Mighty. Interestingly, he would work again with Gene Roddenberry in 1971 in an absolutely horrendous and very inappropriate movie titled Pretty Maids All in a Row. I can't imagine any other actor playing this part of Trelane. It was a very believable performance for a very unbelievable character. Now, as mentioned earlier, human intuition won the day, but the episode also explored the idea of what it would be like when an immature, irresponsible person like Trelane is given incredible power. Makes me wonder what I would do if I were given power like that. I would like to think that I would end world hunger and cure incurable diseases and help humanity. Or would I give in to temptation and abuse the power in selfish pursuits? An important lesson here. Incredible power left unchecked with no accountability is a very dangerous scenario. We have only to look to our own history to see this is true with such characters as Adolf Hitler, Pol Pot, Saddam Hussein, Joseph Stalin, and so many others who use their powers to assert their own dominance and oppress their people and commit horrible atrocities. There's an old saying that absolute power corrupts absolutely. None of us is immune to temptation, and that is why the laws of checks and balances need to be in place. This is a very, very powerful episode. You know, if I were a history teacher at a school, I would make this episode required watching for the class and use it as a springboard to talk about the issues that we just talked about. I really think it's powerful. Now, I mentioned a few moments ago that this could have some important implications for Star Trek. In the 1990s, Peter David wrote a Star Trek novel titled Q Squared. Now, the novel is to be considered non-canon, but it is very interesting as Squire Trelane returns and is identified as a member of the Q Continuum. He has been assigned to the Q. We all know and love, portrayed by the incredible John Delancey, to be trained in the ways of the Q. In the novel, Trelane uses his power in 3 different timelines, and I'm going to put a link to a very cool article about this novel on Wikipedia. It talks in some detail about this. I really think that this is a very cool theory and a distinct possibility that Trelane is a member of the Q continuum. Now, I can't find anything negative about this episode. It was brilliant from start to finish, and so I give the Squire of Gothos 5 out of 5 Starfleet insignias for awesomeness. A superb Star Trek story that you need to watch. Well, that wraps up this week's edition of Trek Mission Log. I hope you found this enjoyable and interesting. I love reading your comments as they come in. Please leave a comment about this episode, things that you liked or didn't like. If you disagree with me, that's awesome. That's cool. All I ask is that we remain respectful of each other and that we keep the comments profanity free. Now, next week, we're going to be looking at episode 19 titled Arena. And we are going to be introduced to a very cool and strange alien species. Who are they? Well, you're going to have to watch to find out. Please consider subscribing. Thank you once again for watching and for getting us to over 800 views last week. That was awesome. Until we meet again, live long and prosper.